First Contact's cry. The crystalline spires of Aetheria Prime shimmered in the soft light of its twin moons, their translucent surfaces reflecting the bioluminescent patterns of the floating cities below. In the highest tower of the Science Ministry, First Speaker Lyra Windweaver watched her whirl through all four of her eyes, her iridescent wings folded tightly against her back, a sign of deep distress among her kind. "The readings are conclusive," First Speaker, Senior Researcher Zephyr said, his own wings trembling as he projected the data into the chamber's air. "The quantum disturbances in the Veil Nebula. They match the ancient warnings. The Devourers are awakening." The word hung in the air like poison. The Devourers, a name that hadn't been spoken aloud in the grand chambers of Aetheria Prime for 10,000 cycles. Their civilization's oldest nightmare, sealed away in the depths of space by their ancestors at a cost so terrible that even now, millennia later, their people maintained a solemn vigil over the nebula where they slumbered. How long? Lyra's voice carried the musical tones of her species, though now they were sharp with worry. Days, perhaps. The quantum field maintaining their hibernation is collapsing faster than our models predicted. Our sensors detect movement within the nebula. They're already beginning to stir. Lyra floated to the vast window, her gossamer wings catching the starlight. The Aetherians were a species born of light and air. Their bodies evolved for the low-gravity environment of their homeworld. Their technology was magnificent, a fusion of organic crystals and quantum engineering that had made them one of the most advanced civilizations in known space. But they had never been warriors. Their bodies, though beautiful, were fragile. Their weapons, though sophisticated, were designed for defense, not conquest. "The Council of Elders must be convened," she began, but Zephyr interrupted, a shocking breach of protocol that spoke to his desperation. "There isn't time, First Speaker. The Council will debate for days, and we have hours at most." "There is another option." Lyra turned all four eyes to him. "Speak." "The humans." The word sent a ripple through the chamber. It had been barely a standard year since first contact with the species from a heavy world they called Earth. The Aetherians had been fascinated and terrified, in equal measure by these beings who had evolved on a planet with gravity 3 times stronger than their own. Humans moved with impossible speed and strength, their dense muscles and robust skeletal structure making them seem like living titans to the delicate Aetherians. "They're so far away," Lyra whispered, "and they're still new to the galactic community. Why would they help us?" Zephyr activated another projection, showing the trade agreement signed between their peoples. "Because they gave their word, First Speaker. When we established diplomatic relations, their ambassador made a promise. If you ever need help," she said, "Earth will answer." They're the only species we know with the physical capabilities and military strength to face the Devourers. Lyra remembered that meeting. Ambassador Sarah Chen had seemed like a giant to them, every movement carefully controlled to avoid damaging the crystalline furniture. But there had been kindness in her eyes, and when she spoke of cooperation between their peoples, her words had rang with sincerity. The Devourers were sealed away because no species in the galaxy was strong enough to defeat them, Lyra said softly. "Our ancestors could only trap them, and the cost was the lives of an entire generation. What makes you think humans could succeed where the combined forces of the ancient galaxy failed?" "Because humans evolved on a death world, First Speaker. Their entire history is a story of overcoming impossible odds. They built their civilization on a planet that tried to kill them every day, with gravity that would crush us, weather that would tear us apart, and predators that would devour us whole. And they didn't just survive, they thrived." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her people's future pressing down on her. The proper procedure would be to convene the council, to debate, to form committees and study the problem from every angle. But Zephyr was right. They didn't have time for procedure, not with the Devourers stirring. "Send the signal," she commanded. "Use the quantum emergency channel they provided. Tell them Aetheria calls for aid. Tell them we need the strength of Earth." As Zephyr rushed to comply, Lyra turned back to the window, watching the peaceful cities below. Her people had no concept of war, no understanding of violence. The Devourers would show them both, unless the humans arrived in time. Unless these beings from a world of crushing gravity and constant challenge could do what no other species had managed, stand and fight against an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. The quantum signal pulsed out through subspace, carrying with it the hopes of an entire civilization. Somewhere, light years away, humanity would receive their call. And then they would learn if the stories about Earth's children were true. If these Deathworlders were really the warriors they seemed to be. May the celestial currents carry our message swift and true, Lyra whispered, a traditional prayer that felt inadequate in the face of such danger. But it was all she could offer as her people waited to see if humanity would answer their cry for help. The pride of Terra, Admiral Helena Reyes stood at the center of Earth Fleet Command's holographic war room, her weathered face illuminated by the swirling display of stars and fleet positions. The quantum emergency beacon from Aetheria Prime still pulsed on the main screen, its desperate message echoing in her mind. The Aetherian signal has been authenticated, Commander Jackson reported, his fingers dancing across the neural interface. Their quantum signature matches our diplomatic records. This is no drill, Admiral. Helena had known that from the moment the signal arrived. The Aetherians were too gentle, too peaceful to ever cry wolf. She remembered meeting their representatives during the first contact ceremonies, beings of such ethereal beauty that they seemed more like spirits than flesh and blood. They had flinched at every sudden movement, their bodies evolved for a world where Earth's gravity would kill them instantly. "Show me our available assets," she commanded. The holographic display shifted, highlighting the positions of Earth's combat fleets. The Third Fleet was closest to Aetherian space, but they were engaged in exercises near the Centauri colonies. The Seventh was undergoing refit at Mars shipyards. "The Fifth Fleet is ready for immediate deployment," Jackson said. "Captain Sarah Chen's battle group is at full strength, and they've been running high-gravity combat drills for the past month." Helena's lips curved in a slight smile. Sarah Chen, the same woman who had served as Earth's ambassador to Aetheria Prime. She understood their potential allies better than any other fleet commander. "Signal the Fifth Fleet. Priority 1 deployment orders. And get me Captain Chen." The holographic display flickered, and Sarah Chen's image appeared. She stood on the bridge of the TSS Hyperion, her flagship. Like all human warships, it was built to withstand forces that would tear lighter vessels apart. The Hyperion's hull was a masterpiece of engineering, designed by a species that had learned to split atoms before they'd learned to fly. "Admiral." Sarah saluted, her posture perfect despite the ship's artificial gravity being set to 1.5 Earth normal standard combat conditioning for human crews. "We received the Aetherian distress call." "It's confirmed, Captain. Something has them terrified enough to bypass their own governmental procedures. Your fleet is closest and combat ready. How fast can you move?" Sarah's expression hardened. "The Hyperion's new Hawking drives are rated for sustained high-speed transit. We can reach Aetherian space in 72 hours at emergency thrust. The rest of the battle group will follow within 6 hours of our arrival. You understand the diplomatic implications. The Aetherians are the most advanced civilization we've encountered. If they're asking for military aid, then whatever they're facing is beyond their considerable capabilities." Sarah finished. "Admiral, I spent 6 months with these people during the diplomatic mission. They're brilliant, peaceful, and absolutely genuine. If they say they need help, they need help." Helena nodded. "Your orders are simple, Captain. Take the Fifth Fleet to Aetheria Prime. Render all necessary assistance. Show them why humanity earned the title Deathworlders, and show them that it means protector as well as warrior." "Understood, Admiral. One question. Rules of engagement. The Aetherians are now under Earth's protection. Respond with appropriate force to any threat. Just remember they've never seen humans fight at full capacity. Try not to traumatize our allies while saving them." Sarah's smile was grim. "Understood. Hyperion Actual. Out." As the hologram faded, Helena turned to Commander Jackson. "Alert all Earth military installations. Begin mobilizing the reserve fleets. If something has the Aetherians scared enough to call us, we might be looking at a full-scale conflict." On the bridge of the Hyperion, Sarah Chen watched her crew prepare for emergency departure. Around her, men and women moved with the fluid grace of people born on a heavy world, their bodies conditioned by evolution and training to handle stresses that would kill most sentient species. Engineering reports ready for emergency thrust. Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel reported from his station. All hull reinforcement fields at maximum. Medical bay is prepped for high-G operations. Sarah took her command chair, feeling the adaptive cushioning conform to her body. Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for maximum acceleration. Set condition 1 throughout. We're going to push these ships to their limits. The massive engines of the Fifth Fleet roared to life, their hawking fields warping space-time around the vessels. To an outside observer, the human warships would appear to stretch and distort as they accelerated to speeds that violated normal physics. Inside the ships, crews strapped into acceleration couches as the artificial gravity compensators worked overtime to keep them alive. "Course laid in for Aetheria Prime," the navigation officer announced. "Emergency thrust ready on your mark." Sarah thought of the gentle beings who had welcomed her to their crystal cities, who had shared their art and science with such open wonder. She thought of the fear in their message, and her hands tightened on her command chair's armrests. "Send this message to Aetheria Prime," she ordered. Message begins. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Hyperion. We received your call. The Fifth Fleet is incoming at emergency speed. Hold fast, friends. Humanity stands with you." Message ends. She took a deep breath, feeling the subtle vibration of the Hyperion's mighty engines through her boots. Navigation. Execute emergency thrust. Let's show the galaxy how fast humans can move when our friends need us. The stars blurred as the Fifth Fleet leaped into hyperspace, pushing their drives to limits that would destroy ships built by lighter gravity species. They carried with them humanity's answer to their allies' cry for help, not just weapons and warriors, but a promise kept. A promise that when the gentle called for aid, the strong would answer. Titans unleashed. The TSS Hyperion burst into real space at the edge of the Aetherian system, its hull glowing from the strain of sustained faster-than-light travel. Behind it, space rippled as the rest of the Fifth Fleet emerged, their massive forms arranging themselves into battle formation with practiced precision. On the Hyperion's bridge, Captain Sarah Chen fought down a wave of nausea. Even with their advanced inertial dampeners, 3 days at emergency thrust had taken their toll on the crew. But they'd made it in time. The Aetherian home system spread out before them, its twin suns casting purple-tinged light across the sensor displays. Multiple contacts detected. Lieutenant Commander Patil announced, his voice tense. "Reading, by all the stars. Captain, you need to see this." The main view screen filled with imagery from their forward sensors. The Veil Nebula that had once been a peaceful purple haze was now alive with movement. Massive shapes stirred within it, their forms defying conventional physics. The Devourers were awakening, and they were far larger than anything in the Aetherian reports. "Size estimate on those entities," Sarah demanded. "Largest contact is approximately 30 kilometers in length," Paddle replied. They're feeding on the nebula itself. Energy readings are off the charts." Sarah's tactical training kicked in as she analyzed the threat. The Devourers were energy beings of some kind, capable of consuming both matter and energy to fuel their growth. The nebula had been their prison, but now it was becoming their feeding ground. Signal from Aetheria Prime. Communications Officer Maya Wong reported. "First Speaker Lyra is requesting to speak with you." The holographic display activated, showing the ethereal form of the Aetherian leader. Even through the projection, Sarah could see how Lyra's wings trembled with fear. Captain Chen. Lyra's musical voice carried notes of desperate hope. You came. You actually came. I made a promise. Sarah replied simply. The Fifth Fleet is at your disposal, first speaker, but we need to know everything about these entities if we're going to stop them. Lyra's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. The Devourers are ancient, Captain. They were old when our species first achieved spaceflight. They consume everything in their path. Matter, energy, even the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Our ancestors could only trap them, using quantum fields to force them into hibernation. And now they're awake. Sarah finished. How long until they reach Aetheria Prime? Hours at most. Our scientists say their feeding is accelerating their recovery. Soon they will. The transmission crackled with interference as one of the massive shapes emerged fully from the nebula. It was vaguely serpentine, its body composed of what looked like living darkness, shot through with veins of purple energy. Where it passed, space itself seemed to warp and tear. All ships, battle stations, Sarah commanded. Launch fighters. Defensive formation Delta 7. These things want to feed. Let's show them what happens when they try to eat near a Deathworld's fleet. Throughout the human vessels, crews rushed to their posts. In launch bays, fighter pilots climbed into their crafts. Machines built to withstand forces that would crush most alien ships. The human fleet's weapons powered up, their targeting systems adjusting for the bizarre physics surrounding their enemies. First speaker, Sarah said, her voice carrying the steel that had made humanity feared and respected across known space. Get your people to shelter. We'll handle this. The first Devourer entity surged toward the human fleet, perhaps sensing the massive energy signatures of their fusion drives. It was in for a surprise. Humanity had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, had split the atom and harnessed the power of stars. They weren't prey. All ships, open fire, Sarah ordered. Show these ancient horrors what humanity's learned about warfare in the last few million years. The space between the fleet and the Devourer erupted with weapon fire, plasma torpedoes, quantum disruptors, and graviton beams, the products of human ingenuity combined with technology traded from a dozen alien races. The attack slammed into the entity's form, and for the first time in recorded history, a Devourer screamed. Direct hits, Paddle reported, his voice rising with excitement. Their outer shell is destabilizing. They can be hurt. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair. Concentrate fire on the breach points. Fighter squadrons, move in with antimatter warheads. Let's see if these things can handle a taste of pure destruction. The human fighters darted forward, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would kill any non-human crew. They were the products of a high-gravity world, their reflexes and resilience honed by evolution to survive conditions that most species would consider unsurvivable. The battle was joined, humanity's finest warriors against horrors from the ancient past. The Devourers had never faced a species born from such adversity, had never encountered beings who had turned the very harshness of their homeworld into strength. Multiple contacts emerging from the nebula, Patel warned. They're coming in waves now. Sarah's expression hardened. Good. Signal all ships, weapons free, full tactical discretion. Remember your training. Remember why we're called Deathworlders. And remember what we're fighting for. The Aetherians are counting on us. Humanity stands as the shield of the galaxy today. Let's make Earth proud. The void lit up with weapon fire as humanity's warriors engaged the ancient threat, their determination and fighting spirit burning as bright as the stars themselves. The Devourers were about to learn why you don't threaten those under human protection, why Earth's children had earned their reputation as the galaxy's finest warriors. The battle for Aetheria Prime had begun, and humanity was ready to show exactly what Deathworlders could do. Crucible of Stars. The battle for Aetheria Prime transformed space into a crucible of light and shadow. The Hyperion's hull groaned as Captain Sarah Chen ordered another evasive maneuver. the massive warship dancing through space with impossible grace for its size. Around her vessel, the human fleet engaged the Devourers in a display of firepower that made stellar radiation look dim by comparison. Fighter Squadron 7 reports successful hit on target Charlie. Lieutenant Commander Patil announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. Antimatter warheads are creating temporary ruptures in their energy matrix. But they're adapting, Captain. Each attack is becoming less effective. Sarah watched as one of the serpentine horrors absorbed a direct hit from a quantum disruptor, its darkness rippling but reforming faster than before. The Devourers were learning, evolving in real time as they fed on the energy of human weapons. Conventional tactics weren't going to win this fight. New contacts. Wang's voice cut through the bridge's tension. Multiple Devourer entities approaching Aetheria Prime's orbital habitats. Civilian evacuation is only 40% complete. Sarah's mind raced. The Devourers were splitting their forces, trying to flank the human fleet and reach the populated areas of the system. Standard doctrine called for maintaining fleet cohesion, but that would mean sacrificing thousands of Aetherians. Engineering. This is the captain. Sarah keyed her command channel. Remember that theoretical discussion we had about using our Hawking drives offensively? Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez's voice crackled back. The one where I said it would be suicidally dangerous and possibly illegal under 3 different space warfare conventions. That discussion. Exactly. How fast can you modify our spare drive cores to create a localized space-time rupture? There was a pause filled only by the sound of distant explosions. Give me 20 minutes and try not to get us killed while I commit war crimes against physics. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Humanity hadn't survived on Earth by playing it safe. All ships, new tactical pattern. Break into 3 battle groups. Cruiser divisions will continue frontal assault. Destroyer Group 2, take up defensive positions around the orbital habitats. Hyperion and escorts will execute Special Maneuver Alpha. On the tactical display, she watched her orders take effect. The human fleet split apart with precision born of countless drills, each ship's crew performing at the peak of their capabilities. The Devourers, for all their ancient power, had never faced an enemy that could match their tactical flexibility. Captain, Patil's voice carried a note of concern. I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the largest Devourer entity. They're trying to communicate. The bridge's main screen filled with a cascade of shifting patterns, resolving into a form that hurt the human eye to observe. A voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds echoed through the command center. Interesting. You are not like the others. Your vessels burn, YTA the fire of a young sister. Your bodies pullcy waiteth the strength of a world that chi shehu ulidi havkiledu. Why do you fight for these wee killings? Sarah stood from her command chair, facing the manifestation. Because that's what humans do. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, and instead of becoming monsters, we became protectors. The Aetherians are under our protection. Stand down, or learn why Earth is called a death world. Laughter like breaking glass filled their minds. We aavdvords civilizations, they tispanidid gay alexides. We aav consumides tierras, and made void of entire systems. You are no thing. Chief Rodriguez, Sarah called out. How's that physics crime coming along? Ready on your mark, Captain. But I should mention that this is going to void our warranty. Sarah's lips curved in a predatory smile. All ships in Hyperion's battle group, prepare for Special Maneuver Alpha. On my mark, execute emergency warp jump directly into the lead Devourer's energy matrix. Captain, Patil's voice was strained. At that range, the spatial distortion will tear a hole in reality itself. Sarah finished. And these things feed on energy. Let's give them more than they can handle. All hands, brace for extreme spatial distortion. Medical teams on standby. The Hyperion's engines growled as power was diverted to the modified Hawking drives. Around the massive warship, its escort vessels moved into formation, their own drives spinning up to match their flagship's suicidal charge. You must destroy yourselves to protect them. Sarah's response was pure steel. We would destroy ourselves to protect anyone who needs it. That's what makes us human. All ships. Execute Special Maneuver Alpha. Show these ancient horrors what happens when you back Earth's children into a corner. The human vessels vanished in flashes of twisted spacetime, only to reappear inside the very substance of the devourer entities. The modified drive cores detonated, ripping holes in the fabric of space itself. The ancient beings tried to feed on the energy, but it was too much, too fast, too destructive even for their ancient forms to process. The void itself screamed as human ingenuity and determination turned the laws of physics into weapons. The devourers had evolved to consume energy, but they had never faced a species willing to weaponize the very foundations of spacetime to protect their allies. As reality itself buckled under the strain of humanity's desperate gambit, Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, watching the impossible unfold. They had turned their greatest weakness, their evolution on a death world, into their greatest strength. The devourers were ancient and powerful, but humanity had learned to survive against impossible odds. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Earth's children had shown why they were both feared and respected throughout the galaxy. They were Deathworlders, yes, but they were Deathworlders who used their strength to protect the weak, their ferocity to defend the peaceful, their determination to shield those who couldn't shield themselves. And the galaxy would never be the same. Legacy of the Deathworlders. The aftermath of Special Maneuver Alpha lit up the Aetherian system like a newborn star. Where once the devourers had writhed in their ancient might, now space itself was torn and twisted, the fabric of reality straining to heal the wounds inflicted by humanity's desperate gambit. The TSS Hyperion hung in space, its hull scarred and burning from the physical forces it had endured. Inside the mighty vessel's medical bay, Captain Sarah Chen pressed a regeneration patch against her arm, ignoring the doctor's protests. Half her bridge crew was undergoing treatment for the effects of extreme spatial distortion. But they were alive. They had survived. Status report, she demanded, making her way back to the bridge despite the medical staff's objections. The devourers are fragmenting, Captain. Paddle reported from his station, his voice hoarse. The spatial ruptures created by our modified drive cores seem to have disrupted their energy matrices beyond their ability to regenerate. The smaller entities are dissipating entirely. On the main screen, Sarah watched as the ancient horrors that had terrorized the galaxy began to break apart. The human fleet's desperate attack had done more than just damage the devourers. It had shown them something they had never encountered in their eons of existence. A species willing to risk tearing apart space itself to protect others. Incoming transmission from Aetheria Prime, Wong announced. Its first speaker, Lyra. The Aetherian leader's holographic form appeared on the bridge, all four of her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and concern. Captain Chen, what you and your people have done, we never imagined. That humans would be crazy enough to weaponize our FTL drives and create artificial space-time ruptures. Sarah managed a tired smile. We're full of surprises. You risked destroying your own ships, your own lives, to protect our people. Lyra's musical voice trembled. The Council of Elders is convening an emergency session. We wish to formally request a permanent defense alliance with Earth. Sarah straightened in her chair, feeling the weight of the moment. I'll forward your request to Fleet Command, first speaker. But speaking personally, I think Earth would be honored to stand as your protectors. Not protectors, Lyra corrected. Allies. What we witnessed today. It wasn't just your strength that saved us, Captain. It was your willingness to use that strength in defense of others. Our histories speak of the Devourers as unstoppable forces of destruction. But they had never encountered a species that evolved on a death world, who turned the very harshness of their origins into a shield for others. Around the Hyperion, the rest of the Fifth Fleet moved into defensive positions, their crews already beginning repairs. The battle had taken its toll. 3 destroyers lost, multiple ships damaged, hundreds of injured personnel. But they had stood their ground. They had kept their promise. Message from Fleet Command, Wong reported. Admiral Rice sends her congratulations and orders for the Fifth Fleet to remain in the Aetherian system, pending formal alliance negotiations. Sarah nodded, then turned back to Lyra's hologram. First speaker, with your permission, we'd like to establish a permanent Earth Fleet presence in your system. Not just for defense, but for cooperation. Your people's scientific knowledge combined with our practical experience. We could learn much from each other. Permission granted, Captain. Lyra's wings fluttered, and what Sarah had learned was an expression of joy. Our orbital shipyards are at your disposal for repairs. And our medical facilities might be able to help treat the unique injuries your crews sustained from the spatial distortions. Cooperation goes both ways, Sarah agreed. That's the real strength we discovered today. Not just humanity's physical capabilities or technological innovation, but our ability to stand together. Different species, different evolutionary paths, but united in purpose. The last fragments of the Devourers were dissipating now, their ancient consciousness finally understanding what it meant to face a species that had turned adversity into advantage. The void was healing, the tears in space slowly knitting themselves back together. In Earth Fleet Command, Admiral Rice was already drafting the preliminary alliance agreements. The galaxy was changing. Humanity's reputation as Deathworlders had often inspired fear, but today it had inspired hope. They had shown that being born on a world that tried to kill them hadn't made them conquerors. It had made them uniquely suited to be defenders. Captain, Lyra said softly, our historians have already begun recording today's events. What should we call this moment? This turning point in our civilization's history? Sarah looked out at the starfield, at the mix of human and Aetherian ships, now working together to secure the system. Call it the day the galaxy learned why Earth's children left their death world, she replied. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to protect. To use our strength so that others might never have to become as strong as we were forced to be. The legacy of the Deathworlders would be written not in destruction, but in defense. Not in conquest, but in cooperation. Humanity had proven that being born in adversity didn't determine your path. It only gave you the strength to choose it. As the twin sons of Aetheria Prime cast their light across the battlefield, human and Aetherian crews worked side by side, beginning the process of healing and rebuilding. The Devourers were gone, but they had left behind something unexpected. A new understanding between species, a new appreciation for the different kinds of strength that existed in the galaxy. And in the end, that might be the greatest victory of all.